Okay. Welcome to the ModernApps SRE Live Call this Friday, a ModernApps SRE Live Call this Friday, December 17th. It is the last call of the year. So I think people are already starting to get in that holiday mode. I'm ready for this, the work week to feel a little bit slower. Those are my favorite work weeks. I was talking to somebody about that yesterday. I was like, it's nice, my boss was asking me, are you planning on working next week? Because VMware is open for work up until I think the 24th or whatever.
23rd, yeah.
23rd. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite times of work, because it's like, get some stuff done. Yeah, right. You don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, because normally it's like, oh, at any moment I can and probably will get a Slack conversation coming in, another email, a phone call, a Zoom message popping up, and it's just always hectic. And like, it'd be nice to just have a little more relaxed work day.
Agreed.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm thinking today. So we have been talking a lot about some new features, specifically creating a better dashboard to monitor all the sites. And so I've been, last week and the week before, we were looking into the effort to, like, what are we going to do to what technologies are we going to use, and what type of solution are we going to go with for our dashboard. And I want to take a little detour from that this week, as is the case in life. It's like, you can't just do one thing. You're always going to have tasks and asks and a whole lot of things that you got to do. So we have to balance making sure that we do feature growth, documentation, and content growth all at the same time. Right? I can't just work on features because then we won't have new content, and vice versa. And so this week I'm going to take a little detour from that to talk about the content growth, and start to work on some updates for the content. So let me share my screen here. And again, anytime anyone has any questions, comments, detours even, feel free to chime in at any point. Okay, let me get that out of the way. And let's go to the website here. Okay, so the next big content item for courses is so one of the things we're doing right now is we're updating the way we're doing some of the positioning for the Tanzu portfolio a little bit. We have been focused a lot on editions, and so we see this course here, VMware Tanzu Standard 101. There's a lot of stuff in the Tanzu portfolio, and generally if you have a particular use case you want to satisfy, because we don't build our solutions architectures around products. We build them around use cases and business needs and such like that, right? So if you have a use case you want to satisfy with the Tanzu portfolio, most of the things that we cover are going to be taking a couple of the products from the Tanzu portfolio. It's meant to be have lots of modular components, so that way we're not forcing the entire stack on anyone, and people have the ability to choose which pieces of VMware and Tanzu they want to handle, which functional needs they have in their stack. And so editions was one of the earlier ways we start talking about packaging, positioning Tanzu, with this idea that editions, we try to align the editions with some sets of products that made sense together for certain use cases. But it gets to be limiting, I guess. And we've expanded the portfolio, and I don't know, these don't really align with the use cases optimally. I think they're really good to have. But where I think they're a good fit is like, if you have a bundle of stuff that you need to be able to deliver a use case, it's good to have some bundled SKUs, and that can simplify the bill of materials, and maybe get some incentivized pricing packaged in there, all that stuff. But the vehicle that you use to bundle stuff together from a pricing and packaging and SKU standpoint should not necessarily be the exact way that you talk about or present the solution necessarily. It's because we there's better alignments for what we have and what people need to do and so on. So removing the additions to sort of exactly like I said, they're there, they're useful, but it's more like these additions are there to like help package a couple common elements together and simplify your bill of materials. But when you conceive of what is your use case is not Tanzu standard, right? We hope that Tanzu standard does align with some use cases, but we really want to get more focused on how you're going to use the stuff than because what does the name like Tanzu standard mean to anybody? It doesn't mean anything, right? It's just whatever we happen to say happens to be there. It's a completely arbitrary sort of distinction. And so the new stuff, the new packaging is, or the new air focus, really, because like I said, this isn't going away or being replaced. It's just the way we're talking about things that's changing. So we're talking about Tanzu for Kubernetes operations is the new keyword, and it is a technically it's a bundle. I don't know what I'm pricing and packaging. I don't know how that system works exactly, but it's some sort of bundle of that consists of several different products, and it's a little bit more than what you get in Tanzu Standard. So Tanzu Standard comes with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, Tanzu Mission Control, and vSphere with Tanzu, and that's that, right? And when you actually get familiar with what do I need to do operations around Kubernetes and cloud native and so on, is like that isn't enough. Definitely not enough to do a standard, even basic Kubernetes as a service operation, because you're going to need you're going to need some more stuff most likely. And don't get me wrong, it's maybe enough to get started, right? Like but the other components that we include are one, Tanzu service mesh, and I do think it's getting to the point for me, even because I wasn't very bullish on service mesh in the past, honestly, but I've gotten to the point where it's like, wow, they've made it so attractive now in terms of how much it simplifies things that you need to do already anyways, that service meshes. And then also observability is, I think, those for operational use cases. If you're going to do a good job at setting up an operational Kubernetes as a service operation, you need to have observability capabilities, not just traditional monitoring tools, because of the nature of how things have changed. And service mesh, it does a lot of different things for you that you probably want to do. So that's it in a nutshell. Regardless of the respective benefits of why we do it or what have you, it's just the direction of the company right now is orienting that positioning for the operator. Now there's also the other positioning use cases as well, right? So one thing that I think helps to understand the position better is, like we were saying, just Tanzu Advanced before, and you go look at Tanzu Advanced and say, well, this could align with a lot of different use cases potentially. And when you start doing that, sometimes it aligns ideally with this one, sometimes it's not so much aligned with others. And so or sometimes there's something for operational use case you have to go into the advanced and just get that one thing from. So trying to make a little more sense there. So there's other things we're focusing on, like, so there's Kubernetes operations at one end of the paradigm, and then we have this idea of DevSecOps, right, which is a bit more of a security focus, but wrapped in this idea that your agile, your entire new software build processes and all that, your pipelines, your CICD policies, et cetera, all those things, are all together. So with security as a focus, but at the same time, if you're focused on building pipelines for software development builds, and then of course there's another use case focus that we have separately on the developer experience and really accelerating and making an optimal developer experience. We're going to focus first on Tanzu for Kubernetes operations. And so the idea here is here we have this course, Tanzu Standard. And if we go into the course, it has a couple chapters, right? We've got this intro, and then the three main, there's the intro, and then there's a couple products, right? There's the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, vSphere with Tanzu, and Tanzu Mission Control. Now, from the beginning, I actually wanted to do this as a learning path with a few separate sub courses. And I didn't do that at the time because we were rushed. I was rushed and I didn't have a template optimized to be a learning path. And I've thought about introducing new templates to be a learning path for a long time, and trying to been kind of the chicken and egg, cart and horse scenario there with how exactly do I how do I create a learning path template? What do I need to do technically to make a template like a learning path? And as I thought about it more and more and more, I've come to realize that I don't have to do anything. This vehicle, the template that we have here for courses, is from a functional perspective exactly the same as it would be if it were for learning paths. And in the different functions that help support the course, like taking tests, validating the skills, stuff like that, those all actually work. They easily work if we were to like really, I guess, long story short, so the only thing we need to do to make this look and feel like the learning path is how we put the content into the course, the structure of the course itself, and the features that support the course type object can actually very easily accommodate it. And so, because really, what are we saying in a course? We're saying, go do something, and then and then come back. Sometimes it's read text on this page. But quite often in these courses, we've got a number of these courses will say like, go do module 5 in HOL XYZ as a lab exercise. So it's already a very normal concept in the courses that we say, hey, go do something on another site potentially, and then come back to this site, and where we can provide you with a test, a validation exercise, and then completion. And so, and it doesn't really matter what you say, go do this, go do that, and you can really end up with this learning function. So what I want this course to look like, whether it's intro to Tanzu standard, right, is maybe you go to this section that says Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, or section 1, whatever it is, with the first thing it says to do, and they'll say, okay, you need to complete the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid 101 course, and then take the test. So instead of having all the text here, it'll say, go take the course, come back here. And that's the requirement. So it'll be much smaller and shorter for the learning path style courses. So that's the goal of this: make it a smaller and shorter overlay, and then have I'll break out these major content sections as individual courses, and then people would have the ability to go get a digital badge for Tanzu Kubernetes Grid 101, and then there'd be vSphere Tanzu, which already is a vSphere Tanzu 101. So or Tanzu Mission Control, they could get that badge, and then so get a badge for each of the individual product courses, and then for those who wanted to then do the overarching thing, not just have only the overarching thing. So any and again, if there's any questions, any comments.
Hey, Art,
Yes.
I have a question. How close are we, or how far are we rather, in having a certification path for the Tanzu product set, like VCP, VCAP, or VCIX, like those kind of
yeah. So it's in progress, and there is part of it available. So you can see here on ModernApps Ninja. Yeah. We have a link here, and you can also find this directly through the EDU site. So there is right now the VCTA and a VCP.
Okay.
So now, one thing like is
level exams, right?
Sorry.
These are kind of like entry level type, exams.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So these are the ones, and there's also a certificate that they call like a master specialist badge.
Okay. These sort of, sorry, I just want to also kind of specify, these really follow the normal VMware VCP kind of methodology.
No, true. And I'm just, asking that question because I think the ones that are really, count towards anything is really the recap and,
yes.
and then the ones that are coming after that, right? So just curious about the timeline and how soon do you think we're going to have those kind of certifications for these products?
Yeah. So basically the backstory there is the business unit itself has gone through a lot of change, right, over the past couple of years. And there's a lot of churn in various people who are responsible for the educational strategy, being not even necessarily leaving the company, but this is being moved over here, and this team's going to marketing, and there's just a lot of growth, a lot of change, multiple acquisitions, stuff like that have happened, and as a result, the strategy around it. So I've got these first couple courses out now, and these are actually good, good or tests. Well, they're pretty good tests, but there wasn't like there's a few challenges. Like the course that's associated with this exam is not ideal, and so I would like to just start working on the next tier to get to VCAP. My personal feeling is, the course, there needs to be some work on the course that's associated with this test, not even necessarily the test itself. I'm not in the decision-making authority over that. But the good news is the reason why this program isn't more mature and why it has had some challenges is because we haven't had really good or consistent oversight at the strategic level and people in the right. They haven't had roles, like the right type of role didn't exist initially to have the right oversight over this program, and now it does. And so we have people in place that that have the appropriate authority and seem to be, from my perspective, doing a very good job taking the right approaches to get this on track to get to the next level. So I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but I have a feeling like we'll probably be scoping. We're definitely going to be, I think, scoping the next level beyond just this one. We're looking at a couple different things, right? So they're looking at splitting out. This one says application modernization. That's the title of the entire track, because every business, let's say VMware business unit or product line, has one name associated for these certified professional programs, and so this application modernization name is the name we've been using for the portfolio marketing, and so it got applied to the name of this cert, but this is not a developer cert. So just to be clear, this is your standard.
I think that's the problem, right? I mean, that name kind of talks to application designs, loosely coupled, application principles, and this training doesn't talk to any of that.
Yes, and so the naming is going to get updated, and I can't say exactly the day, but I've already seen, there's plans right now being worked on that we will have a split track. And so from the VCTA, VCP level, they're looking at, entry, more of the lower level developer, DevOps focused, I'd say developer focused track. And then having the name of this one essentially probably changed to something similar, but the naming will be clear to where there's one part that is oriented more towards developers, and another part oriented more towards operators. So they'll be split into two tracks, and yeah, it's still in the planning. I don't want to say like in the planning stage, like nothing's happening, because they're definitely actually actively working on developing the courseware, developing the tests for the rolling that whole project out. But then over time it'll become an entire sequence, and with the aim of getting all the way to VCDX and so on. I don't know the exact timelines, but I am happy that I said we have for a while we didn't have a team in place with the right roles and people to properly take this across the finish line and get us to the next level and so on. And now we do. And so I think we're talking probably in the matter of months before we have some meaningful information on when the next exams are coming out. And yeah, so it may be sometime within the next year. I would expect to have at least the next level of exams and certs out. And
if I'm sure you've been keeping close to what the Azure teams and the Amazon teams are doing around this field, right? I mean, they've done a lot of work around not selling their services really, but really helping customers transform their applications. So they've done a lot of work around application architecture engagements and helping customers get across, the line around how they're going to transform those applications to use these services, right? Now, we seem to come at this from the other side. We selling our products, but I don't see a lot of activity around true modern application design principles and how we're going to train not, our clients or our partners, but our internal people. Are we expecting architects and consultants internally to take that onto themselves to kind of get with, the modern application design principles in helping customers getting them across that line? Or are we also looking at creating a training track for, let's say, Java people or C# people to kind of get them over that line where they can learn how to engage clients in a meaningful way, where they can advise and help clients transform their applications?
I think it's an interesting question, right? Is what because we do, I think, we do a tremendous amount of that application portfolio modernization. We have a lot of really cool stuff happening there, but the message isn't necessarily communicated well to everybody. And so there's that question: is this like core team in a typical sales model, whether it's VMware core or whether it's a reseller or anybody, right? They're gonna have the core team and then the specialist team. What's the delta there? Which is interesting, right? Because you think about most of the infrastructure technologies for VMware, they're all pretty closely related. And so the core SE, it's just like that server storage networking, right? That's been the three converging silos. And so if you're in that area, you understand, your peers fairly well in the infrastructure platform side. And then when you flip over to, to a lot more like, how do we design the next generation application fabric and, stuff like that. It oftentimes becomes different people, different skill sets, different teams. And just like we had with server storage and networking, there's a convergence happening there too. Things that used to be handled very, very separately are in certain cases and teams. We have things like DevOps teams emerging to do more and more things closer together and create new types of functional roles and stuff like that. So yeah, we've got, I actually, which was, so this, are you a VMware employee, Philip?
I am. I actually sit in the Tanzu team now for the next 2 quarters to kind of learn what they're doing. But I'm just curious, like we seem to be very product focused, right? We're all about Tanzu and the product itself, but there's also this whole SaaS drive around consumption, and products don't sell consumption. Solving problems drives consumption.
I'm glad that you said yes, because
I'm just curious. Like we've got a lot of traditional people in the business, right? But we've taken on a big thing here. We are ultimately trying to break out of the old that we've created over 20 years, right? And I think that's really the question, right? How are we helping the field, educate them, to get them onto this path, right? Because you got to do that somehow, right? And I'm curious whether we are planning and creating that kind of training, or are we really focusing only on our products? And that's it.
Well, I think part of the challenge is like, we very much would like everybody to use, we need to get, I think we need to get better at positioning and selling Tandoo Labs. Like, and the reason why I asked why if you're a VMware employee, because there's a call, Tandoo Live, that is only available internally. We actually had a really, really good session on application portfolio analysis and the associated professional services. And they went through like, we've got a number of, very differentiated tools in that space of application portfolio analysis that you only get through Tandoo Labs. And so I think it's one of the interesting things. It's like, I think there's been a lot of marketing around Tandoo Labs. There's, a lot of use case documentation that can be found. But yeah, I think it kind of like, we also have a lot of, depending on the salespeople, a lot of salespeople that might prefer to have a product focus. And so even though the pitch to lead with the Tandoo Labs conversation and the professional services conversation is there, and there's assets available to support it, not everybody uptakes it, right? And so I don't necessarily try. I need to try harder. I need to think more about the impression that how that is created by that, because I'm usually in the mode of like, oh, let's create assets for this, we've got asks for that, I need to work on this project, I need and I need to think about like the sales motions. Like I think you're right. I mean, and I think one of the things that made me realize that even more so was that specific Tanzu live call. I'm like, this is so impressive, and it's so important. And this is the type of conversation I feel like we need to be having with people more than, but yeah, there's a churn that needs to happen, because the consumers of that message we need to do better at working that along. Go ahead, Big.
So yeah, I just opened up an email here, which is kind of talking to our conversation here. It's an email that came from the professional services organization, but they just shared a new certification track. It's called Application Modernization track, and they're going to be actually having certified Java developer application type architecture certification soon. So it seems like they're ahead of the game. And
yeah, it's looking at that's exactly what I was talking about, right?
And they actually have a VCAP application architecture, and then an application developer certification, in here, which I'm not sure how soon they'll have it, but at least they're talking it. They're actually calling it out here.
Yeah, it's like they're making some decisions on exactly how to publish it all publicly. So right now, this one that says application modernization is actually a little more ops focused, infrastructure focused. It's still the realm of DevOps potentially, depending on how you structure your organization, but it is definitely more on the operational side of that. But they're going to come through and change the name for this one to where it more reflects that focus. And then they're going to have the other one you mentioned, right? There's a new one that's going to be a little bit more developer focused, and they're still scoping that right into, it's not necessarily teaching people how to do programming basics. It's more, what is different? Like, what do you need to know to apply? One, to validate that you do have some background programming skills, but then how do you apply those? So
it seems like these are actually, takeable exams already. I mean, you're saying that that's future, but I'm on the VMware education side, and they're talking about that these are actual exams you can take right now.
So is it called application modernization, or?
Well, so I just pasted the link into the chat. So
awesome.
I think if you would like to click on that, you can look at that.
This is good. Yeah.
That's the standard Spring stuff, the certification stuff that's been brought in under the VMware name. Art, if you think about the fact so and also the education track or education EDU was recently put into the professional services BU, if you will, now called CSX BU or whatever. So they aren't living where they used to live. So it sort of looks like it's coming out of PS, but it's really the same old EDU, if you will.
Yeah.
And so stuff is starting to be blended together, but I think your point, if you don't mind me just kind of backtracking for a second, your point about the product focus, this is a mental transition that we're all trying to make, right? And one of the things that happens when different groups get requests in, that's often coming from product marketing, or product management, and it's focused on the thing that they're building. And I think the more cross BU work that we do, the more we're going to see a focus on solutions that include multiples. And I'm not trying to offend, but I think the EDU materials always lag the transition because they have to be so repeatable and and art is.
Well, it's one of the big reasons why we do the whole Modern App site, right? Is just
because it's live and it's fresh, and that's we're trying to get people like some practice with these technologies, right?
Yeah, and I think the question I'm asking is really around the angle that there's really two tracks here, right? And they ultimately meet somewhere in the future, but there's the track around the product, okay, that Tanzu product set, and then there's the coding side, which is so critical, right? I mean, if a customer doesn't catch up to that, then Tanzu is not gonna really help them. So I was just curious about what we are doing on these two tracks. Everything I've seen has been very VMware centric, our products alone, and I'm just curious about, because I'm always looking at the cloud guys, right? How are they doing it? And they have a strong emphasis on the application designs, and I'm just curious, if we going down that same path. And it looks like, that we are. I think the training is very encouraging, that we are putting an actual application modernization track, in here, which can teach people about the application design principles, right? What are you doing around your application to get it to really use Tanzu properly? And I think that's, that I think, it's good for us, to have done this, because this is critical.
Yeah, one thing I would say is, like, when you look at this one, I'm actually surprised this is published right now, because this is definitely something that, fortunately, when you look at this, this is probably a good indication of that something similar to this will happen. This is definitely not what's actively planned. There is no certification called VCP Spring. There probably will never be a certification called VCP Spring. I can't say for sure. Now, this is, and that's not a big problem, because this is a placeholder, right? We said, oh, we want to have something that meets the type of things you're describing, right? And we don't know exactly what we want to call it yet. So let's just say now because there's also Spring Certified, which we do. We do the whole Spring certification stuff as well. So it doesn't say VMware Certified on it, and I think is perhaps a good thing. We back the whole Spring certification program.
Yeah. Because it is well beyond anything that is specific to VMware product, right? It's about the very thing, Philip, that you're talking about, right? It's about a programming activity.
So you're saying that these aren't takeable exams at this point, even though it's on the site and it's being advertised?
Yes.
Welcome.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so we don't have them for, so VMware Educational Services is its own division, and they get to control what they do and set their own policies, and so we get to work with them and try to within the constructs of their policies and the way that they have processes and so on to come to a happy medium and what we have there. But I would not expect that, and so if you go to sites, so you see Modern Apps Learning, but if you also go to Tandoo Developer Center, like if you spend any time at Tandoo Developer Center and see how much stuff there is, tons and tons of stuff on the site, right? And this stuff is not your traditional educational form, but there are, right? And then you look at like Cube Academy, that's all courses. And now here, this is getting to be where this is centered around learning paths. Got all these learning paths here. So this is educational content, right? But none of this has anything to do with the educational services division. This is pretty much, we've got to create content. We've got to try to create a bunch of content. And we need to be structured learning content so people can move, but we got to get it out ahead of the bureaucracy, right? And I want to be careful about how I mentioned, because when you think about VMware EDU, what they do, right? They translate their stuff into 100 different languages. They have such a huge global footprint by the time it gets there. So, and everything is polished to a certain level. That's, it doesn't move quite as fast. So it has a bit of time to have a little bit more maturity and polish around it. So I think there's a place and a need for both. But if you want to see the newest, best, latest, if you're trying to keep up with what's the latest really good learning material to enable me, it's probably going to be on one of the MapBU owned resources like Developer Center, or maybe through the hands-on labs, or through Modern Apps Learning. And then EDU will follow that time-wise. It takes, taking a little longer to get the, just because they have, like all those extra things that they do. They've got a lot of formal processes that you have to follow to get things the way they want them. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the good thing is here, right? And we have a chance to kind of get ahead of that, and some of these things will become the fodder for educational courses as they're developed. But they're definitely have a degree less formal, a degree less polished. They're not translated into 50 different languages or even 2 different languages. We run everything on continuously develop. So I could go in and change something in here. Now, I'm not going to make a change to one of these courses that's going to fundamentally change the nature of the course, but the actual content, we change it anytime. Someone says, hey, this is wrong. Hey, this could be better. Anyone, anytime can come and change these courses, right? Because if we go into the actual course itself, it is GitHub repository. It's a GitHub page on a GitHub repository. So it's served as a page, but you can actually go into any page and say, what's important in a Kubernetes solution. This is a video. If I wanted to go in and, hey, look at me. I didn't even have a beard back then. Maybe this is getting old. You could maybe watch it. Maybe you're going through a course and you watch this and you're like, beardless art he didn't have his presentation wasn't current, and I think I could do this better, right? Anyone can come in and click edit this page and go in and upload their YouTube video instead, and hit submit. And there's an approval process that happens, so it's not like completely Wild West, right? No, and you can't. You're not just going to change it without anybody knowing, and it's just going to, right? But anyone can submit requests to change anything at any time, and we update it as we go. And it's a very informal, fast-paced, fast-moving environment with the intent to kind of help us to, you look at, as you've done, look at all what the different cloud providers are doing. There's a lot of different stuff. There's no one answer. So this is maybe one project to help us create some assets that are a little bit less formal, that maybe move a little bit faster, that we can adapt a little bit easier. But there's nothing about Modern Apps Learning that is also trying to be, this is also not trying to be like the approach for how everything new is done. This is just one project here that gives us some assets and some ability to approach things a certain way that, and maybe this methodology that we have on this becomes bigger. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But it is for at least for the time being, it's a way for us to experiment and to have control over something, and we can come in and change it, and we can put, and any member of the community, if there's a member of the community, if we decide to say, hey, we really don't have enough of this level of content, what can we as a community do about it? Like, we can get on these calls. I could say, hey, for the next month, we recognize that we need to have this type of content. Let's all get on these calls, and we're going to spend our time talking about and creating a course asset. And really, anybody can create their own course. And so if there's a team within VMware and they're looking to be able to create a course type of asset, you can come to this site as well, create a course, and have there's a whole like lifecycle management model and tool set that we've curating to be able to manage this type of environment. So that's kind of a nutshell of what it is. And of course, not just courses, right? We have simpler objects like guides, which are similar to courses, but don't have, at least currently don't have tests and user registration processes and things like that. Also no digital badge, but it makes a little simpler object. And then the tutorial objects, which are anybody who writes even their own blog, where you have a lot of people writing really good technical blogs about how to do things, often on their own sites. These just click through to somebody's site. So if somebody's writing a good technical blog that is in alignment with the educational goals of the community, anyone can follow the little instructions right here and post their related blog in here, and we end up with a nice catalog of technical education materials in this common catalog, and the tag cloud that results from it. So a little browsing filtering. I need to add searching onto this. I don't have search on it right now, but work in progress, and that's the tutorial section. So, yeah, so let's see what time it is, 8:43. So let's just review a little bit more about what we're going to do. We're started off here about moving this into learning path type objects. So we mentioned with the VMware Tanzu standard 101 course, ultimately what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be replacing this with Tanzu Kubernetes. And what that really means is instead of just covering TMC and TKG and vSphere 7 with Tanzu, we're also going to add content for Tanzu observability and Tanzu service mesh. But in the process, we want to take these from being a single course to where we have this one overarching course to where it's more of a learning path, to where your course, like right now, you know, 2 VMs, all the content is in this course object, but I really want it to have this overarching course object. People will come, Tanzu Kubernetes operations, and within it, it'll be go take the TMC course, go take the TKG course, go take the Tanzu observability course, you know, and there'll be one-on-one courses for each. And then when they're done with all that, you'll be able to use this, the Tanzu Kubernetes operations course to be able to get that learning path level badge. So you'd be able to get a badge for each of the individual courses, and then another badge that will signify the collective grouping of them. And so the project plan for that is, let's go in here again to look at this. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by working on this course, because we have to manage that transition of the TK, as even though we'll want to displace the name really more than anything else. We're not going to change any of the content really, but displace the naming, this Tanzu standard naming with the Tanzu Kubernetes operation. We still have to develop a couple new courses first and get the structure right. So we want this to stay in place as we do the transition. And so the project plan is essentially, we're going to take the Tanzu Kubernetes grid overview and take all this content that is physically stored in this course, and we're going to move this to its own TKG 101 course, right? And then we'll go into the Tanzu standard here, and instead of seeing all the content in here, it'll say, go do that course and then come back. And then we'll do the same thing with the, well, vSphere Tanzu, we don't need to break that out because this is actually already a redundant overlapping space with, we have a separate vSphere Tanzu 101 course that this overlaps with quite a bit. So we'll probably dump this content, maybe do a review to see if there's anything we want to merge into the existing vSphere 7 with Tanzu 101 course, and then we'll just get rid of most of this, and then again in here we'll have something that says, okay, go to the vSphere with Tanzu course, take that, and then come back instead. And the same thing for Tanzu Mission Control. We'll create a new repository for TMC 101 and move all this content over there. Same thing. And then so the main thing that people will do, they'll come into this, they'll see the learning path. Now I am thinking that I want to keep the test objects associated with courses and not learning path. So I'll probably create a new template that will optimize the optimized. Now, technically the template for whether it's a course or a learning path, they're the same template, and there's not really any meaningful difference. And I have this question: do I want to create a whole separate separate category for learning paths? And as I thought about it, we're already getting kind of tab heavy on the site. Thinking, I think learning paths, like you can imagine another tab over here, it's getting too tab heavy. I think it would be really ideal because courses and learning paths really fit the same user, right? If you're looking for a course or a learning path, I mean, they really can fit well into the same sort of category. So my idea for learning paths here is, as we introduce learning paths, they will just essentially be a course object. Yeah, you might give them a dedicated type, but typically, types, but it's not, I have to come up with like a better schema for this. Like it's not a level 1 type. It might be a level 2 type, for example, where a level 1 type might have a dedicated tab, and then if you get into the template, how we do the templating for that, And there's a number of different things in the Hugo backend that might be related to, hey, this course objects. You give them separate pages, separate directory pages, etc. And I don't want to do that for Learning Pass. We'll just you'll find the Learning Pass right in the course pages. There might only be a separate template for when you create a learning path type to help simplify that. But otherwise, we'll keep it as a sibling to the course object and handled on the same course pages. And so let's go ahead and, what time is it? 8:48. Real quick before, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but just to give you a little preview of how we're going to do some of that stuff. First thing, I want to see if I've already created a TMC one. I did already create a repository for TMC 101, didn't I? Because at one point I was going to make it, but I think I'm going to redo that. I think I'm going to just delete this repository because I don't know what's here. It's definitely old. It says I created it in March, or last time I touched it was in March here. So let's just delete this. We'll go ahead and delete the repository. Yes, I understand. So now, and one of the good things about the site is we have templates that automate creating new sites. So that's nice. One of the bad things that we don't have yet is we don't have really good lifecycle management once for deployed instances of the template. And so I update the template, and we're working on the system to where it's like if I can make updates to a template for a website, that it's going to create a way to update and lifecycle manage the actual deployments that were based on that template. Right now we don't have that, so that's another good reason to delete and recreate, since that old one was not current anyways. So this way we'll make sure that it'll be current. I'm just going to see if I did not create a TKG 101. That's good. So let's go ahead and let's do we're going to do course repo template. So when we want to create courses, we use this course repo template, and it does a lot of different stuff for us. And it's actually nice and easy to create a course. So if I go into my actions, I have some nice workflows here. One of them is to create new course. So let's go ahead and create this scaffolding. We have to create a new course object for TMC 101 and for TKG 101. We already have it for Tandoo 101. And then after that, we'll have to look at the new courses. But for the first couple courses will be the ones where we have that existing content from Tandoo standard. We want to break out. So to create a course here with this workflow, right, we'll call this Tanzu Mission Control 1. And so there's a couple degrees of shortness, right? Because sometimes you need a properly formatted but shorter for like your navigation bar. Now, the whole title for this course is pretty short, so we can just use that for our full title and our short title. And then we need an even shorter title for using in the URL itself. So we'll just call this one TMC 101. And then there is 2 characters that we can use to randomize. Give us a semi-random. It's going to assign us four digits as well, but then we get 2 characters that we can add that allow us to like come up with a global uniqueness ID that is definitely random, but it may have some familiarity to it for us. So that way it may be a little easier for us to remember or roll off the tongue easier. So, and I don't really have a preference for what this one's called. So let's just say, I'll call it, say TM or whatever, doesn't really matter. And let's just say action VMware, we'll do mission control. And that's it. That's how this will create the scaffolding for a new course for us. So if I refresh this page, it'll show, I can see here that the workflow is running, and we can go in and watch the progress of that workflow. And it's going to do a bunch of stuff. You can also go back out to the Modern Apps Ninja org. And one of the cool things is when you go to the org view, as you can see here, just the github.com/org, and this is true of any org. that the top thing in your feed will be the most recently modified in your org. And so I can see here that that repository was created. My workflow may still be running to tuning that up. And so that workflow does a lot of interesting things. It copies the template into a new repository and names it. And it does some scaffolding. So there's like when you create the, to get the GitHub pages working right, there's a configuration files that you have to make some changes to. It puts the title on the title page. There's more scaffolding I want to do in terms of things that are predictable enough to where it's you can automate the configuration more. But it's pretty decent now. It sets up, we have a whole role-based access control model across with teams across these, so it sets them up to make sure that people in the global, admin team have admin rights on that repository, and people in the global triager team have triager level rights to that repository. So it does a bunch of stuff that way. And you can always go through, looks like it is still running, and watch it. Oh, I think it's done in detail to see what it does as it runs. And now that we have the new course, go back here. Let's see, it is 8:54. So let me show you this real quick. So now I've got this new course module and I want to work on it. I can immediately start editing it through the browser. Or since I'm going to be doing some more work with it, I want to do it locally in VS Code. So I'm going to copy that back into VS Code here. Now, got several different things already open here. Let me close these just to clean this up. And so I just updated that vSphere with Tanzu 201 course. So I've got that there. But we need to go and let's look at how we're gonna, why is my bar there? There we go. And I wanna actually make that a little larger. Okay. Okay, so now I'm here in my Git, my repository I used to clone these things down. And I actually forgot a step. There's one more step I want to put in here first. So I'm on the ModernApps Ninja repository. Typically, if we're going to be doing major work on it. Now, if you're going to work through the browser, you can actually just click on the files and start editing in the browser. And GitHub will automatically kind of behind the scenes do the forking for you. So that way, when you do modifications, you do them on your own copy first and not on the main copy. And then after you make the changes, you submit them from your fork to the main one, right? So I actually, since I'm going to do these locally, I'm going to fork this first to my account. This gives me my own copy I can work on. So I'm not. Now, in this case, it doesn't matter because it's a brand new asset. It's not published yet, right? Not a big deal. But what if this were a published course I was working on? I wouldn't want to. I want to make my changes in the safe space first, right? Before I push them to the main thing. So now I've got my repository. I can go into my local environment, clone it down. Okay, yeah, I know. Okay, so now we've cloned it down, and I can just do Hugo server here because it's already there in all the repos. What is it? What is it going to do? It's telling me that I'm able to locate config. Oh, I'm not in the right directory. I got to change the directory. Okay, so then just do Hugo server once you're in the new directory that you're cloned down. And now I've got that TMC 101. I can go into my content files for my courseware. This is all here. Got all this content files. And then I can also run it locally as a local server. So let me click on that. All right, and now I've got so you can see this is running locally. I can take this course and I can modify the local files here until I get it the way I want. Once I have them the way I want, then I can save it and push it back up. And that's so we'll get into more of potentially. I don't. So next week we may be back to looking at a dashboard for all the services, or we might continue a little bit more on working on some of this, breaking out the content and setting up templates and getting this course structured up. So that's it for this week. I said next week, didn't I? No, there's no next week. We're off for a couple of weeks, but next time we meet, we will continue down this path. So happy holidays, everyone. And
Thanks, Art.
thank you.
We'll appreciate it. Hope
Always
you
a good time. You got
yeah.
big plans, Peg? You doing anything fancy?
You want to stop the recording or?
Oh yeah, good call. Let me
As
go ahead
well.
and stop the recording if I can figure out.
Not
how
that
to-
I'm doing anything that is so interesting I wouldn't want it recorded, but maybe it's just not that interesting.
No, that's good.
Just the usual, hanging out with family.